going to do a video today on the difference between goal setting and strategies. So a lot of people, when they have an idea for something, or you have a business or whatever you want to produce in life, people set goals. That's generally what people do. And then there's also strategy. So I'm going to assert that strategy is significantly more effective than doing goals. So for example, if you are a company and you say, we have a goal to do X amount of sales, you might have things you want to do in the company. We're going to do this initiative. We're going to have, often it's very general initiatives. We're going to do a initiative to make our culture better. We have an initiative to do lots of team building exercises. Or, if you're a biotech company, we have an initiative to get 3 drugs to phase 2 this year. And that's all well and good. But the amount of, if you look at startups, for instance, right, it's like something like 90% of startups fail. 90%. Now, what's interesting is that when you do strategy in the way that I'm going to teach you guys, you have an 80% success rate of producing the outcome that you want to do with strategy. So outcomes versus goals is a big deal, and strategy is your access to outcomes. So we'll get into strategy in a second, but a little bit more about goal setting, which is that with goals, they're a little bit not necessarily related to what you actually want to accomplish. So the amount of companies that I have seen that had really nice sounding goals, but then they went bankrupt. Or people who say, my goal is to run, I run 3 businesses, I'm starting my 4th. I didn't do that because I set a goal to do it that was outcome based. The amount of people that set goals and then fail to produce the goals, and they come to me, because people come to me quite a bit when something isn't working, which is unfortunate. You would think, you should do things when things are working. It works out a little bit better. But if things aren't working for you, and you come to someone like me, and I actually take a look at the actions you're taking, or certain ways of being that you have, whatever it is, often the actions have absolutely nothing to do with the goals that you say you're committed to. It's a little funny, not really, but it's interesting. So the outcome, so talking about outcomes are things like, I want to produce, right? So I've raised about $5 million over the last few years. Now, that was not because I had a goal. So say you have an outcome. Let's say you have, we'll do something simple. Let's say you have a fitness strategy. You want to get in better shape. So your goal might be, I want to get in better shape. That's really great, but it's really vague, it's really broad, and it kind of leaves you off the hook. So an outcome might be, I want to be able to do this Spartan race by X date, or I want to be able to run a mile in 7 minutes by X date. So you want it to be something, I want to get to 9% body fat in 90 days, whatever it is for you. But you want to be able to break up something, if it's you want to be able to do a measurable result that, a bright 12-year-old could understand, and something that is measurable. So, I want to have a 6-pack in 90 days. The second part of the outcome is it should be something not only measurable, but something that you could reasonably produce. It might be tough, but it's possible to produce it within 3 months. So it could be a week, it could be a 1-week thing, but it could be 3 months. If it's something longer than 3 months, then you want to break it up into these 90-day chunks. So if you have like a 3-year strategy, you want to break it up into these 90-day chunks. So the first part of this strategy model, if you will, is you say, okay, I want to produce X outcome by 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is, or by 1 week. Then you want to make 2 columns, And in your first column on the left, you want to list resources. Now, these are all the assets that you have. And when most people think of resources, they think of things like money. Now, money is a resource, but it can be anything. It could literally be your energy, how you vibe with people. It could be the current connections that you have. If you're doing so let's stick to the fitness strategy. A resource could be, 10 personal trainers in your area and 10 gyms in your area and 3 CrossFit boxes in your area. So the resources are assets that you already have at your disposal, not things that you would need to get, but things that are already there. And you want to list as many resources as you can possibly think of, to the point where you overwhelm the system, as I call it. You never actually, so it would be where you want to ask the question, do I have more than adequate resources to fulfill on the outcome? AKA meaning that if you put in 10 different personal trainers, maybe you'll only ever call 1 or 2. Maybe you won't call any of them. But it's resources that you have at your disposal that will help you produce the outcome. So that's the resources section. Once you have more than adequate resources, you then ask yourself the question, do I have more than adequate resources to fulfill on the outcome? If the answer is yes, then you move to the second column. The second column is what we call behaviors. And behaviors are these macro actions. So you might be things like work out, go to the gym, call a trainer, things like that. If you have more than 5 or 7 of them, you probably have too much. So, when you're goal setting, people will say things like, oh, you have your to-do list, or I have my weekly action plan, or, things like that. And there's nothing wrong with any of those. Those could actually be resources, by the way, if you're into those. But the problem when people rely just on that is, you'll see in a second, I won't even tell you the answer to that. The more broad you make your behaviors, the more it leaves you space to take these micro behaviors. So it could just be work out. That could just be your behavior. Now, maybe that means go for a run. Maybe that means call your trainer. Maybe that means go to the gym. But the more macro that behavior, the more you're able to improvise in the moment what you'd want to do. So once you have a few behaviors, you then ask the question, do I have more than enough resources to fulfill on my behaviors? The answer is yes. Then you move on to the next question, which is, do I have more than adequate resources, do I have more than adequate resources to fulfill on the outcome? You've already answered yes to that. Then you ask the question, if I kept taking these behaviors, would I inevitably fulfill on the outcome, even if it wasn't on time? That's the key word. Now, you want to do it on time, but, let's say you didn't do it on time. Would you inevitably get the results you wanted? Now, if the answer is no, you might want to re-examine behaviors. And this is really brilliant, because half the time, you'll actually say, no, these behaviors are not adequate to fulfill on the outcome. So it really gets you to check yourself and self-coach yourself. And in groups and teams, this is really an amazing accountability system. Once you can answer the question yes, then the next part is what we call pitfalls. And with pitfalls, to any of you watching, I'm going to be posting this also on my YouTube. But to any of you watching this, procrastinate. Everyone does. Now, if you actually break down what procrastination is, it's outcomes that you're committed to, right? So you have to have an outcome you're committed to. So it's behaviors that you take that undermine an outcome that you're committed to, right? So it's behaviors that you take that undermine an outcome that you're committed to. So if you're not committed to anything, a behavior only is a procrastination when you put it on top of what your outcome is. So, going on Facebook for some people might be what you would call procrastination, but to other people, it's part of their social media outreach. So Facebook is not inherently a procrastination. So your pitfalls are literally behaviors and actions that you take that undermine the outcome you're committed to. And with pitfalls, you want to write that on the bottom of your page, right? So you have resources on the left, your outcome and by when on top, and then your resources on the right. On the very bottom, you want to put pitfalls. And the rule with pitfalls, you want to make them as specific as possible. So where behaviors, it's as macro as possible. With pitfalls, you want to make them as specific as possible. So it could be, I tell myself this is too hard and I go eat ice cream. Or I give myself a cheat day even though I know I shouldn't. Or it rains and I use weather as an excuse not to go to the gym. Or I'm not in the mood today and I use my mood as an excuse not to take the action I know I'm committed to. Whatever that is. Then from there, what you're going to do is, so this is something you want to pay attention. You might even want to write this down. When you find yourself in a pitfall, and you will, so not if you find yourself in a pitfall, when when you actually find yourself in a pitfall, or you can rephrase it as if you find yourself in a pitfall, and you will, immediately take a behavior. Doesn't matter what behavior it is, just take a behavior. And what that will do over time is it'll actually retrain your brain to start looking at pitfalls as an opportunity to take a behavior. And you'll catch yourself. You'll actually distinguish the procrastination as a pitfall. So it's really, you probably can see how powerful this is. And there's a lot more I can say about strategy. This is just a real tip of the iceberg introduction to strategy and looking at outcomes versus looking at goals, right? Building strategies as opposed to goal setting. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions for me, you can always shoot me a message. If you're watching this on Instagram, you can DM me. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can just put a thing in the comments. But I'm always happy to talk and connect and help people how I can. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.